Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Occult Exploration Society Live. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined as always by my co-host and good friend Dion. How you doing, Dion?
Life is wonderful today. I'm still breathing. We're all still breathing.
We're all still breathing. We're all still breathing. We had to postpone our episode last week because you got in a little bit of an accident, eh?
Yeah, Achilles heel, huh?
Craziness. But you're doing better today, and we're back. So thanks for bearing with us. And we're excited to dig in today to the dragon tongue. But before we do, as always, we got to give you guys a warning, content warning. It's going to get wild. We're going to get into some dark magic. We're going to be discussing some weirdness and, the usual drugs and all that jazz. So if that bothers you, sorry. And as always, this is our interpretation. We're just two friends exploring ideas. We're not scholars. We're just going to show you some sources, show you some things, and discuss this dragon's tongue. So, Dion, before we begin, what is dragon's tongue from your perspective? What are we talking about?
Ooh, we're talking about different things here. That's why it's going to be multiple episodes. Are we talking about dragons that fly through the sky and breathe fire? Or we're talking about their body parts, dragon body parts? Are we talking about symbology or a secret language or code or something? And I'll say all of the above.
Pretty much. What we do get, though, is we do get that dragon priest connotation, where it seems to be, in many of these instances, these magicians or these performers of magical rites or these witches are called dragons. And it's related to the magic that they're performing, but there are many different ideas of what this kind of dragon tongue relates to. Some people call it we know about the language of the animals and the language of the birds. Orpheus famously can speak to the birds and can speak to the animals. There's the language of the snakes. The oracles have the snakes whisper in their ear, right? And specifically, though, we have this magical spell that Ammon had showed a few of us called the Ouroboros phylactery. And the Ouroboros phylactery, I'll get into it deep on my side of the presentation, but it comes to us from the Greek Magical Papyri, and it is basically a magical sigil, a cure-all, a protective talisman that is designed to be worn and guard you against evil. But there are several magics related to it there. But there's specifically within there, we have these weird symbols that are untranslatable. No one has been able to translate them. The academics call them the charakteres. They're just these characters. Most scholars believe there are voces magicae, which is, words that are not have any meaning, but are representative of babbling. But we know that the babbling is a huge part of these magical rites. The goddess is often called La La or La Ra, or blah blah. You get this kind of stuff again and again. So there's a lot of layers to picking apart what this could possibly be. But you've presented us, or you're going to present us, Dee, on a whole presentation, right?
Just the beginning. We got more coming. I want to pack your brain with symbols. Your subconscious. There's no answers here, just questions. And after you get all these questions, maybe you start to build the road or the path. So, yeah.
Beautiful. All right. So we're going to pull up Dion's presentation here. So what are you starting us off with? What are we looking at?
The horse legs, horse feet. That's what we're starting today. That's right. So we're talking about secret languages, mystery languages, a different way to express codes and symbols through sounds, or even nonverbal communication will be part of it. And coming across our studies, we get it a lot into psychedelics and psychoactives and theogens. And part of that is ergot. Will come up a lot in these studies of mythology, especially in the Eleusinian rites, in the Greek rites and stuff, dealing with the kykeon, these potions, psychoactive potions. And ergot is a form of a fungus that grows on wheat that's psychoactive. They would call it St. Anthony's fire. Well, another term for ergot is the back of a horse's hoof. And we've talked about it in several episodes. It's there at the very back, and they still don't know what the actual usage of it is in equestrian lore. Some people say it is to protect from rain or from debris. It collects stuff on the back of the hoof there. And if you go up, you can see those chestnuts behind the knee there. And ironically, the chestnuts have pheromones. You could take the chestnuts off, just like you could take the ergots off with a knife, and it doesn't hurt the horse. You could actually use the chestnuts to bait another horse to come over because they smell it. Because, horses use smell. That's why when you communicate with horses. And you could eat the chestnuts as well as eating the ergots. The ergots can be cooked we found a recipe in hot oil. It's funny because there's other recipes to cook ergot, the Claviceps purpurea, the fungus in hot oil to remove the alkaloids. So it becomes bioactive in a safe way, let's say. And so there's also another term for ergot. It's called thieves' cant.
The argot, right?
Yeah. And it's a language of thieves and of murderers and shamans, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Let's go to the next picture. Yeah. And so here you can see that's the horses on the threshing floor. We talk about the threshing floor a lot. And sometimes it have a pole in the middle as a maypole, sundial, Shiva, Linga. Now these horses, in threshing the wheat, if the wheat has the Claviceps purpurea on it, the ergot, it would collect on their hoofs, in the back of their hoofs right there. And isn't it ironic that the ergot would collect on the ergots? And so we have a language to describe that, obviously. So let's go to the next pic. And so what's funny is, talking about the ergot, even in the Bible, Luke, there was the Sabbath. We've talked about that, where it's on the Sabbath. They're going through the fields. I'll read what it says. One Sabbath, Jesus was passing through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick the heads of the grain, rub them in their hands, and eat them. Now, if you go to the next pic, yeah, right there, you'll see this is Claviceps purpurea. That it's a mold that grows on the tips of the wheat, and it's actually a purple mushroom. If you were to scan it and look really close, it's a purple mushroom. That's why they call it the burning purple as well. Is another term for it. St. Anthony's fire.
Because in many cases, we talked about this in the previous episodes, but it could cause extreme burning. It can even lead to necrosis of the flesh or insanity, right? So it was like something that had to be highly cultivated in order to produce the right ergot in the right way. And later, peoples tried to eradicate it as much as humanly possible. This becomes a central feature of many European countries, as well as Catholic and Christian purgations of a lot of pagan practices. Like we have the purity laws from Germany, stipulating that the grain must be pure and we must destroy all ergot, right?
And the Bakers Guild and the Brewers Guilds, they were in charge of controlling the amount of ergot that could make it into their daily diet. Because back in the different times, they might cultivate a field of wheat to have extra ergot. We're using things that are domesticated because we want more milk, more meat, more this and that. But in ancient times, you might have cultivated these plants using husbandry and agricultural techniques to make them more psychoactive. And that's just the truth of the matter. So let's go to the next slide there. Right here, and this is thieves' cant, ergot, is the term if you type it in. And what is thieves' cant? It is a form of a language, because we're talking about secret languages and ancient languages and how to communicate symbols and ideology, nonverbal communication at that. And this was about, I think, the 15th century when this came into being. It was murderers, thieves, shamans, and psychics, everyone in the underworld. They had a way to communicate with a secret language, we could say.
So
the thieves' cant, and people would call this cryptography. If anybody knows about cryptography, not cartography, making maps, but cryptography, which is making things, hiding it, making it cryptic with symbols and numbers. Let's go to the next pic. Right here. So you might have heard of John Dee. We talked about John Dee a couple episodes back, the Shakespeare episodes, and how he invented an Enochian language. He was let's say a scryer, an astrologist for the queen. Dabbled in, this is going into the Rosicrucian stuff and all the, the roots of Freemasonry, and even in Shakespeare stuff, which we'll get into too. But what he did was he encrypted. Go for it.
John Dee really was the most highly educated man in Britain of his day. He had the largest personal library in Europe. Okay. And he was an advisor to the Queen and a member of the Secret Service, and as well a practicing magician. In the Enochian, it comes out of a series of magical rites he did with his partner, Edward Kelly. And Edward Kelly was the one who would ingest various compounds in order to have visions that then would be translated and interpreted by Dee. And it was their shared work that produces this Enochian language and these Enochian rites. Really interesting stuff.
Right. And I think he would, Edward Kelly would scry on a black mirror.
Yeah.
He would stare into it. And so, and this is a lot of interesting stuff that deals with English history, Shakespearean history, political intrigue. There's a lot going on here. You could approach from politics or from magic, astrology, a lot of different angles, as well as alchemy. These people were alchemists as well. They were trying to turn lead into gold.
Absolutely.
So let's get the next pick. All right, we got another language here. Thebean. You've heard of the Thebean, and that was Johannes. What's his name? Trismegistus. Johannes Trismegistus. He was a German necromancer. He's one of the original people that talks about Faust, the Faustian legend. And he had come up with another language as well. And it's the same way. We're taking languages and encrypting them. And these are the magicians of the time in Europe. And to them, this is Dragon's tongue. This is a way to hide language or communicate in a different way.
Right. And a lot of this, like this Faust magic, this demonic image of that Dr. Faust or Dr. Faustus, this is like super ancient in terms of the European folklore, because we can relate Dr. Faustus and from the Germanic versions all the way back to Rome in the character of Faustulus, who's involved in the founding of Rome. He's said to be the one who adopts Romulus and Remus, along with his wife, Acca Laurentia, the mother of Lares. And there's a lot of weird magical symbolism going on with that character and those rites of where Romulus becomes elevated and Remus dies, and all of this stuff involving this Faustulus character and this magic and the goddess as Acca Laurentia, right?
Love it. Love it. So let's hit the next pick. All right. So if we're going to talk about Dee and Kelly, we need to talk about Shakespeare or Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, some people might say. Cool with it all. There's a lot of information that there's even other people involved. They're all involved, let's say.
Absolutely.
If you're into the Rosicrucian and all the beginnings of this stuff, Theosophy and Freemasonry and Thelema and all this stuff, this is a time in history when France and England, Germany are repackaging these Greek and Roman, Mithric, Persian, Egyptian classics, and it becomes this, form of the Enochian codes. And even in Shakespeare, we have something, iambic pentameter. People think Shakespeare is just words. Well, it's words that are spoken in codes with secret meanings. And it's in series of 5. We use 5 for playing music. We're both drummers, and we count 5. And 5 meters hard in drum because it's not normally felt. Everyone feels things naturally in 4. So the pentameter has a certain feel to it. And some people even say that deals with Venus.
Yeah, 5 is related to that star of Venus, right? And to the Earth, and to this thing about drawing down the star. 5 is the center of the Saturn square. There's a lot going on with that kind of, and it's 1 before 6, which is that perfected middle, right?
Right. And they're getting this pentameter, this way of encoding poetry and theater into musical song and rhymes. And that's why they're using these type of rhythms. Now, so a lot of, when we look at the Bible or something, or these Buddhic texts, we have to consider they would sing this.
Yeah, there's a
These are being
song.
sung. They're being sung, and they're being sung in rhythms that help put you in a trance, as well as to help you learn it. There's multiple reasons for the rhythmic pentameter of this,
And what's
or the
also
meters, let's say.
it's wild that you bring that up too, because it just makes me think about again this idea about the song and the song of the birds. If we listen to like Orpheus hears a lot of his magic and his poetry, he hears it from the birds and then he records it. Or we see this in the Vedic context, the rishis, right? The Vedas are not composed; they were heard. They were heard as song on the wind coming from that holy Vak, that great goddess, which is sometimes even described as a bird, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Let's go to the next pick. So here's more of the Shakespearean stage. It's called blocking. When you see them on the stage, so now you know they're speaking in 5 meters of 5 pentameter. They move around on the stage in different positions. If you're the main, let's say the main actor, you'll take what's called center stage or front stage, so you're closer to the audience, and the person might move behind, so your voice is louder. And then when it's their turn, they might come forward, and you might have somebody over on the side doing something. And as each person moves, the other actor moves. You're not just staying there; they're moving around on stage. But guess what? They're moving around on stage based on astrotheology. So let's say the main actor's the sun, and his lover's the moon. And let's say Jupiter or somebody over there is the antagonist or protagonist, and they're having a relationship that's astrotheology, as well as a human drama relationships, that you'll see in Shakespeare. So there's a lot going on here that's mathematical, symbolical. Um, there's language, there's play on words. Let's hit the next pick. Oh, I remember we talked about this in one of our culinary episodes. If it is good, 'tis better in a coffin. Coffins are pastries. We think it's you preserve your food in it, and you didn't even eat the shell. It wasn't tasty. It wasn't a good pastry. It was to preserve a meat inside for long term.
Yeah, or to protect it from the fire, because remember, right, a lot of these people didn't have proper ovens. So then what you would do is you would make your pastry, you put your stew, meat, and veg inside, and then you would bake the whole thing in the fire, and when you cut it out, then you eat it, so that exterior shell was designed to protect the food so that it could maintain the proper temperature and not get burned.
Yeah, and so our language itself is encoded. The English language is the Orphic Vox, is the dragon's tongue. We just don't know it because we didn't know what a coffin is. We don't know what half the stuff is. Half of this stuff has a different meaning in ancient times. And we're talking about alabastrons and all kinds of things that have a different connotation in ancient times. So let's hit the next picture. Abracadabra.
Wow.
That's a famous magician spell that you'll hear said in a comical way, but it was used in early magic as well.
Yeah, it relates all the way back to the PGM. Even there's variations of this, right? It's again this
Alpha, beta, and yes, the 4.
Voces Magicae, right? And you get these palindromic words that are in these circles, and you're supposed to say them, and it's that unfolding, right? We get this a lot with these magical phrases.
Yeah, and this is one of them that they're encoding into language. Spells, numbers, and symbols with secret meanings. Let's go to the next pick. Some people call that Gematria. Here's a Greek version of Gematria. Some people can put a Hebrew one there. You can put English language. And what it is converting the alphabet into numbers. So that we'll take words like snappy and we'll assign each letter as a number. And then they add up those numbers, and those numbers have occulted meanings.
Yeah, it can get so wild, right? You see this a lot with like the Hebrew texts, because like you had mentioned the Gematria there, people get obsessed with looking for codes, Bible codes and all that stuff, or they'll look to the numbers to see the equivalent of different names. We see this famously with the 666 and the 616 relating to Nero in the book of Revelation, but we also know that that 666 relates to that expansion of the Helios energy, that black sun, and the drawing down of that energy to the earth as representative in Pascal's triangle. So there's many levels to this kind of stuff too. It gets wild.
Even the Saturn square. I mean, I should have included that. We'll have that next week. Is that not the dragon's tongue? Is it not a symbology or a symbol of way of interpreting energy into real time? So yeah, let's hit that next pick. Hieroglyphics. Ancient Egypt. Some people don't know how special hieroglyphics are. They have 3 values. So of course, we just showed you in Gematria, you'll assign a mathematical value to each letter. So it would have a mathematical value. It would have a phonetic value. It would also have its symbolic value. So you might see there is a bird, which could stand for a letter, it could stand for a number, or it could stand for the bird itself. So you could have different stories taking place. You could spell out a word with symbols, but the symbols themselves will tell a different story. When you add up, say, a bird and water, it might spell something different in the phonetical sense or in the mathematical sense. So this is talking about the dragon's tongue, interpreting language and symbols through visual, sound, and nonverbal communication. So let's hit the next pick. Boom. Yeah, how do I say it? Samdaya Basa, which is the Twilight language in Sanskrit, from India. And this includes sounds, mantras, yantras, mudras. Mudras are hand symbols. If you've ever seen the yogis do it, and we don't know what they're doing. We're just like, oh yeah, I just don't know the fingers. No, hit the next pick. Boom. There's a different symbol for different energies. And so
planets, wow.
Yeah, different planets, they can get really deep with it. It's just the hands, but you got a whole body that can move all kinds of ways. The body can talk. The body's an alphabet, and you can interpret the body through dance. Absolutely. If you're just seeing a wiggle, then you're missing out on half of it. This is divination through visual elements, visual communication. As well as this is a form of magic to do things. So it not only has a symbolic meaning, it's magnetizing that symbolic energy to itself. It's by calling on the name of something is magnetizing. And you might have seen this hand symbol somewhere before. Sabazios or Christ. Let's hit the next pick.
The very famous hand of Sabazios from the mysteries. So Sabazios is the equivalent to Dionysus in the Phrygian mysteries, right? And these also became kind of synonymous by the 5th century with a lot of Hellenism. And you see the cult of Sabazios fairly widespread, but it is a mystery cult. It's also related to Mithras, right? And the Thracian hero, right? These are figures who you'll see who are slaying a bull, right? Who are riding that horse and holding a spear. These hands normally would be placed upon a staff, which was called a thyrsus, and they would be screwed in on the bottom. We know that because we see paintings depicting that. If you look at the hand here too, though, we got some wild stuff. Like on the thumb, you got the pine cone, which is representative of the pineal gland, right? You'll have like a turtle usually. Around the wrist, you'll see that there's a snake. The 2 fingers that are coming down, on many versions, there'll be a snake head that comes up coiled there. Sometimes you'll have Sabazios sitting in the middle of the hand, also making the gesture. In between the 2 fingers, you see the fish. It gets really, really wild, and there's a lot of interesting astrological, magical symbolism here. And this is deeply related to what we're talking about, and I'll get into it deeper on my thing. But also this sign here, recognize that in the Greek and Roman world, this was representative of that logos, reason, calling forth the power of speech. and the power of mental faculty to be able to call something to account, right? So again, we're talking about this power of speech, the dragon tongue. And this was something that would invoke that speech. You see this often, the hierophants make this sign. Within the schools of philosophy, before one would speak, they would raise their hand and make this sign, right? And it's related to that power of Hermes, who is that reason, right?
Love it. Well, you know, in India, that the Samvasadaya, or let me say it correctly, it's the Samdadya Vasa, known as the Twilight Language. It's defined as a polysemic language. And what polysemy is, it's from ancient Greek, means poly, many, and sema, sign. So it means many signs, that you can interpret something in many different ways. Polysemic. That's what this is about. It's not just about what you see in the surface. There's more to interpreting everything, visually, audially, tactically. Now imagine what Braille is for brothers and sisters that have lost their power of sight. When you lose one sense, the other senses wrap up. And they have to go by audio and tactile. And tactile is a big part of our senses. We just don't get it. Sometimes we move faster than we think. You know, it's our body communication or reaction. And our olfactory is more powerful than our taste. Taste is, most of it is smell.
Right.
It's all activated. It's our senses. Our senses are the dragon's tongue. It's how we interpret energy and communicate with it. So, you know, let's hit the next pick. So since we're talking about the hand sign, you have Jesus doing, you can see he's doing it there, his little hand sign. We'll interpret this painting. Someone will say, yeah, that's his beloved disciple hanging in the lap right there. What's in the hand? Some will say it's a scroll or an alabastron.
Right. And this is going to come up later in my presentation, but this idea of the serpent in the bosom or in the lap is a really important sign involving of this mystery magic and these rites. So, and often, right, what is the serpent? It's a phallus. And what is the bosom? It's the vagina, you know? And so you're seeing this, he's here holding an alabastron in the lap of Jesus. And this is John the Beloved, the only one who engages in physical contact with Jesus, right? Who's always seen with Jesus, is favored on his right hand, remember, with his twin brother again, you know?
The sons of thunder.
Right? And this could be either a scroll, something that would have been consumed as an entheogen, or it could be an alabastron, something that was inserted into an orifice as an entheogen with entheogenic oils, right?
You notice it's red and white.
Yeah.
So it has those colors already. Go to the next pick. Because you don't believe us that what they would do was scroll. And he said to me, son of man, feed your belly with this scroll that I give you and fill your stomach with it. Then I ate it, and it was in my mouth as sweet as honey. So you prefer it being alabastron? Either way, we're gonna get it in the body. Go to the next pick. Here's a representation of that from one of these children's Jehovah's Witness books. You know, that's Ezekiel eating his scroll right there.
Except it wouldn't be paper. It would be made of animal skin that was dyed with entheogenic inks.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Why else would you do that? And some people say, no, they're digesting the words. Cool. That's the dragon's tongue, is that there's many meanings.
Yeah.
But we could show you that there's actual physical interpretations of a lot of these ancient myths. And that's what people get uncomfortable about around here. They wanted it to stay mythological. They want to remain in the world of fairies and ogres and trolls. They don't want it to be magical recipes for transformation of your life.
No.
So look at the next pick. Since we're into the biblical, we'll have fun with dragon's tongue in the Bible. You know, here's one from Genesis, or I think this is what Abraham or the servant. This deals with the slave, a contract, non-verbal communication to seal the contract. And he says, To the chief servant in his household, the one in charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh. Put your hand under my thigh. Go to the next pic so I can show you what that looks like. Yeah, that's an interpretation of it right there from one of these biblical books. This is where I get the pictures from Bible books. They're just showing you the positive. To them, this is the positive. It's how you seal a contract. I know we talked about sealing that other contract in that episode about the ear, Malchus
Right.
and the ear, and how they would
bind slaves with the earrings.
yeah, they would put a slave on the door and they would knock a hole through his ear. And then later on, you would have to match the hole on the door to prove that it's you. And that was when you're a slave and you've been freed, but you still want to remain a slave with your master. Yeah, what's that about? You know, our Malchus, that's when Peter and the beloved are there at the night at the rest in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he cuts off the ear with the sword of the soldier. And that soldier ends up being to some people, a prophet. They prophesize about him, and it means to be a king, Malchus, like Melchizedek, weird stuff. But it deals with ears, communication. That's part of ears to hear, eyes to see. So let's hit the next pic. So let's get into another thing in the Bible that's a form of nonverbal communication. The prophet Elisha. You got Elijah and Elisha. They both do naughty things, both naughty boys. So then Elisha got in the bed and lay on the boy, mouth to mouth, eye to eye, and hand to hand, and he stretched himself out over the boy, and the boy's body became warm. And the boy was dead at that, so that's necrophilia. Get that? Give that extra element. Yeah, how you want to interpret that? The dragon's tongue. What is he doing to the boy? And you find that in the Bible. There's a few of these quotes. There's at least 3 or 4 of them where grown men get on top of young boys to anoint them or baptize them or heal them, whatever you think you're doing to them. Let's see the next pic. So here's a Revelation, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and it had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. As a dragon.
Dragon tongue on full display, right? I'll get into this a little bit more as well, but look, this second dragon has horns like a lamb. This is very specific imagery relating to Dionysus, right? Dionysus is the lamb-horned god, and that's representative of his sacrificial nature. He's the one who is sacrificed. He is the ruler in the earth. He dies and rises again. He speaks like a dragon, and he's the second dragon in Revelation.
Just saying,
And that dragon, the word for dragon is a very specific word. We just talked about it. We saw the hand, and I'll show you it in the Greek, but we saw the hand. That word for dragon is Sabazios.
What you're going to see next week, we're going to show you more of it next week. We're going to get heavy on the Sabazios. And with the thing with the nonverbal communication in the Bible, we've even showed the one where Jesus spits in the guy's eyes and it puts his fingers in the dude's ears and spits in his, we know about that one, and it sticks out his tongue and puts his tongue to tongue, like to the Dalai Lama, doing this stuff. And so it's a form of communication. It's in there. So people wonder why it's happening today. This book's a training manual on this shit. Just saying. And even you remember Joseph and Mary, when they came to the temple and when they got Mary as a virgin from the temple, the angel came to Joseph and told him, hey, she's going to be pregnant, and he's like, I'm an old dude and she's from the temple. I shouldn't, this ain't going to happen. And he goes, well, since you don't believe me, you can't talk. And he goes outside and he can't talk. So there's also a point of dragon's tongue where you can't speak, where the power of speech is removed. Like the time where they go into the Holy of Holies and it's all smoky and he sees that donkey at the altar. And homie comes out and he can't talk.
Yep. And we see this a bunch in the Greek texts. I'm going to get into it again a bunch, but we have the goddess Dea Muta, who, for speaking out against the injustice of Zeus, has her tongue ripped out. you know? And there's all this stuff about silence and then being able to speak and this power of the voice and of that reason. And what is that reason really doing? It's calling to account, right? What is reason? It's calling to an account if you go to the ancient meaning of the text, right? And what is Dea Muta doing to Zeus? She's calling out his BS. And for that, she has her tongue removed. He's deprived that power of speech, right? There's some wild symbolism going on.
So with that, I'm going to say a person's name, Otto Kern, Mr. Otto Kern, German philologist, who came up with the concept of the Orphic Vox. He was an interpreter of languages, and this deals with a lot of, because the Germans, there's a train of thought there of these German alchemists and intellectuals that are decoding, just like we show you in the English and the French. There's different schools, and there's a German school, which a lot of people don't pay attention to, because after World War II, it kind of soured it. All the German occultism was soured after World War II, let's say. But there's a lot there to unpack.
Absolutely, right? Otto Kern, remember, what he was engaged with was this. He was looking to try to construct as much of the Orphic tradition as possible. So he was looking through every Greek text that he could possibly find and looking for anything that related to Orpheus or any of those related symbols. And that's how he discovered the Orphic Vox, was by doing this brute force, going through all these texts and looking for any reference and trying to piece them all together. And then what he started to notice is that, wow, the Orphic stuff stays in the language. It's just hidden in symbols. It's hidden behind different etymologies of the word. This is why someone like Dr. Ammon goes so deep into the various etymologies, because there's, like you said earlier, there's always more than one meaning. It's what was the word you used?
Polysemic.
It's polythemic. There are multiple layers of interpretation and metaphors. So they can be saying one thing and mean something else. And unless you have that mythological understanding, unless you have been taught, you can't really figure out the extended metaphor behind these Orphic Vox images.
In modern times, if I was listening to a Drake song, we might call it a sneak diss.
Yeah, exactly. A sneak diss. That's a good way to
put it. Saying, I mean, double entendre. I mean, there's just so many ways of what metaphors, analogy. It is what it is. And so Otto Kern, we got to give props to him, because he was at a place in time where it actually said, no, there is a secret language that's where some of the Enochian stuff and that stuff, that's theoretical. Some people could say that's make-believe at that, even though it's real and it's there and it influenced people. Some people could say, well, it ain't from Enoch, from the Bible. That's some made-up connections to the past. Otto Kern's Orphic Vox is real. Just saying. And the other stuff could be real too. Everything could be real. Everything's illusion and real. You know how I roll.
I know.
That's why this is fun for me. I am not preaching, telling nobody to do none of this shit. I don't believe in any of this shit. I'm trying to have a fun Sunday and entertain your ass.
Exactly. We're not scholars. We're just interested people. We just love mythology and we love wild stuff, and we're having a good time. So take us for what we are. But yeah, let's continue.
Right here, the language of the birds. Since we're getting into that neck of the woods, notice the staff. Let's start with the staff he's holding. That's famous. You'll see that. You'll see that a lot. It's a form of divination, an augury staff. When you have that, that means you can interpret bird symbols. It's like a shepherd's staff. It looks like in the way it curls.
Yeah. Is this Tiresias?
It could be. I didn't look who it was in the picture. I just looked for the fact that he was holding the symbol and there was birds, and he interprets the augury.
Pretty sure it's Tiresias, who's blind, the most famous sage of the Greek tradition, right? A key figure in the Odyssey. And yeah, he interpreted the bird song. So I imagine.
Oh, yes. So if he's blind, he's using their sound.
Yeah.
See, because I was going to try to explain it as augury is when They have they'll let out a flock of birds sometimes. In which direction they fly in, we'll interpret. Oh, they go to the left, that means no. They go to the right, that means yes. If the bird eats the food, that means you're going to win the battle. If he doesn't, that means you're not going to have a kid. But he's interpreting it through sound.
Yeah, it's wild stuff.
And bird song is amazing. They do speak in repetitive cadences. It's polyphonal. They go up and down, and it's called signaling. We do it as humans too. We signal. Even virtue signal is part of it.
We're both musicians, and like, I don't know, you can get so deep into bird song. It's some of the most complicated music ever. And if you don't believe me, go check out Messiaen in his Symphony for the End of Time, where it's referencing all this wild bird song. But it's some of the most incredible music that's out there. It's wild, beautiful stuff. And in the Greek world, right, they saw the birds as the height of beauty. Aristophanes famously says, right, if life was about achieving perfected beauty, the gods would have stopped with the birds, because you can't get more pretty or more sonorous. You just can't.
And even their movement, they fly.
Right? They
Flying is the next level. That's when
they dance.
You dance with movement. You're not bound by, what's the word? Gravity.
Wow.
We're very gravity beings. We're dense. We're heavy. So yeah, let's go to the next pick. So here's another form of divination, and divination is a language. Tarot, Ouija board, I Ching, however you want to do it. It's interpreting nature through symbols and numbers.
Synchronicity.
Here's from an Etruscan mirror. And what the guy's doing, he's looking at a liver, an animal liver.
Haruspex.
Yeah. And you'll see his foot is raised up on a stone. That's a big part of it. Because in the next episode, we're going to show you paintings where we're going to study Renaissance paintings and show you what each body part is doing in the painting, interprets something. Left foot forward, hand on this, where you're pointing. Like, you might look at a painting and they're pointing somewhere. And you look where they're pointing, you're like, oh, shit.
Oh, Dion, we've lost you.
You've lost me?
Got to give him a second here. Are you back?
I'm here.
All right. Okay.
I'm still here. Good.
Sorry, I lost you for a second.
Yeah, and so this is interpreting livers. His foot's on a stone. It's part of a form of nonverbal communication. Like I was saying, we're going to show you in the next episode in different paintings from Renaissance how to interpret the different angles and body gestures as a form of language. So let's hit the next pick. So what he's doing is a form of liver interpretation. Here is one of these little haruspes, interpretation, kind of a statue, let's say.
Yeah, this would be something that you put this on the table as a guide for when you were feeling around on the liver. And if you notice different bumps in these different quadrants, they would tell you different meanings. So this is like an education tool for how to do haruspex, liver divination.
Yeah. Oh my God. And it's tactile, everything. And it's by feel. He's feeling it. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. A little something there in the ventricle. That must mean you're going to get married. In what language is this? Using body parts to interpret the future and the past? This is the dragon's tongue. Literally, this is the dragon's liver. So let's go to the next pick. Now that we've set the stage of what we're talking about.
That also comes, just before we go, that comes to that Prometheus myth, right? Who has his liver ripped out by the vulture, right? And that vulture is Medea. And that liver then becomes a central component within the theriac, which is the drug that will grant one immortality or ionic life. I shouldn't say immortality, sure. Ionic life. But yeah, interesting stuff, eh?
And that's what's funny, because in these root elements that we're looking at, they're usually entheogenic, they're divinatory, they have a lot of powers. A lot of these things they're multifaceted. What do we call it? 5D chess? Yeah, right. Let's go to the next pick.
Wild.
Apollo. So let's talk about oracles.
The leader of the muses himself.
You know, they divine the energy of nature, of the gods. They interpret communication. But before you do that, you got to kill a dragon or a snake. You have our relationship. There's a relationship with that snake kingdom, that Echidna. You know,
because Apollo, right? He famously kills Python, right? I think that's what we're seeing here with his arrows, and Eros is helping him, that golden Aphrodite power.
Because you'll see at the Oracle of Delphi, they had the little crack in the ground with the gases coming out, but they also had snakes. Was a big part of it. They had snakes and they had other animals up in there too. The animals are part of it. They're entheogenic, but they're also forms of communication. Not only now, imagine this: if you had fed that animal a bunch of hallucinogens, ergot, let's say, that we talked about at the beginning of the show, and then you ate that liver, that shit might have a bunch of psychoactives in it. It's called bioprocessing. So not only can the body parts show you the future, you can eat their body parts and they'll show you the future in a different way too. This is entheogenic husbandry, where animals can, go there. Animals can process entheogenics, and we can take their milks and urine and body parts and get high off it. So that's why these deals with the dragon's tongue, getting high off the dragon itself, using it to interpret. So here's Medusa, which there's a famous myth. You'll see it in a lot of our episodes. The head on the shield, the aegis.
But sometimes it's a shirt, right?
Sometimes it's a shirt, or sometimes it's a goat skin with the cut off snake's head on it, and in some it's a dragon's head on the skin, on the fleece.
And notice it's right over Athena's breast. She wears the Gorgon over her breast as a sign of her power to strike fear into her enemies. Wild stuff going on here. And this is going to become an image that plays up in my presentation, the snake over the breast.
It's a form of communication. It's the dragon's tongue. It's communicating the dragon energy visually. You'll see it and go, oh shit, don't mess with that. And let's go to the next pick. Because it's Medusa and Medea. We showed you in the past couple episodes dealing with the snakes. In some versions that's a dragon. It's not a snake. And in here she tames it, gets it high,
puts it
to sleep. It's dealing with turning off the communication, turning off the power of speech, putting it to sleep, cutting off an ear, pulling out the liver. How we interact with energy, with animals in nature. We have rules nowadays, but back then they had a different set of rules. They did things much differently. And this is the dragon's tongue, communicating with snakes, using them as antidotes, as toxins, as poisons, using it for all kinds of different reasons to communicate. So let's hit the next pick, since we're here on the snakes. Asclepius. They had the Asclepion, and people would go there to get healed. And part of what he would do is you would sleep in this room, and he'd have snakes go on you as you sleep at night.
Yeah, and they'd whisper in your ear was what they would say in the texts.
Yes, that's a big part of it. And it's the relationship with the dragon and in communication. Those are two words we can put together. This episode is dragon and communication, or serpentine and the power of speech. And here, they would wake up in the morning and they would tell Asclepion their dream. Like, hey, I had a dream. The snake told me this and this and this. He said, all right, now turn that into a play. And I want you to perform that in the amphitheater. And that's part of your healing. I'm going to give you some herbs too, but there's an emotional, cathartic, theatrical component to healing in medicine.
Absolutely.
It's how you're going to emotionally release that trauma. The medicine can help, but you got to release the trauma emotionally. And it's through forgiveness, self-forgiveness on that. Even if they attacked your ass, you still forgive yourself.
Right. through that exploration of your own individuality, your own dream, and expressing your own dream, giving voice to this stuff, feeling it, putting it on display, right? Powerful, powerful stuff.
Yeah,
Very therapeutic and still used in a lot of modern therapy, right?
I say Asclepius is the dragon tongue in that aspect because he's using the serpentine energy to communicate and heal humans, and using it to do something.
Right.
It does something. It's not just a myth. Just like with the toxins, the arrow poisons, with the snake toxins in the hair. And they're using snake toxins to shoot arrows. It's doing something. It's communicating the dragon energy to you. You know, if I got shot with one of those snake arrows, I'd feel the dragon's tongue right there. It'd be burning. You'll die. Yeah. So let's hit the next pick. You know, and there's another person before we even get into Kuan Yin. I didn't mention Melampus. Melampus is a Greek person in myth.
He speaks to the birds too, doesn't he?
Yeah. And the snakes lick his ear.
Yeah.
They lick his ear. It's a licking motion. And part of it is you'll see next week, we're going to get into bearded snakes. So the bearded snakes also deal with Hermes and Sabazios. You know, it's the bearded dragon, the beard. It's why the pharaohs have the beards, that fake goat beard that has the cistus, the temple incense in it, the mastic gum.
Right. And we even see, like in the Syrian goddess, right? The young men used to sacrifice just their chin hair to the goddess, right? As the sign of death and rebirth, you know, because this is such an important thing and it would mark that transition from youth to adulthood.
That's right. And so here we have Kuan Yin riding a dragon. The dragon myth is universal on the planet. In Asia, it's very heavy. We kind of lost it in the West and it turned into snakes. In Asia, they're like, nah, that shit's a dragon. It's still a dragon to this day. You go to my Asian buddy's house and there's going to be a dragon on the wall there somewhere. You know, Kuan Yin's holding an elixir in her hand. The elixir of immortality. It's a healing elixir. And if we're going to use the dragon's tongue to interpret the painting, she's not offering you the immortality. In different pictures, you'll see Kuan Yin. Her hand may be pointing the base down. If she's pointing the cup down to you, she's offering it to you. This is how we interpret these paintings. Their body angles and what they're doing. It's part of the dragon's tongue. You know, it's wild.
Absolutely.
And so this is people don't know Kuan Yin is, some people consider the female Buddha, which I know pisses off some people because they don't believe that a bodhisattva could be a woman. You know, just throwing that out there. And so they have different versions of Kuan Yin. So now I want to talk about dragon's tongue, real life dragon's tongue. That's in a museum somewhere that we can get on a plane and go somewhere and look at it. So go to the next pick. This is from a 15th century in Europe, there, Bavaria, and up in the hills there, and it deals with the legend of Amun. There's this legend of Amun, and he killed the gold guardian dragon who lived next to the river Seal. And he cut off the dragon's tongue and they dipped it in gold. And you can go see it in a museum to this day. And go to the next pick. There it is. And that's another museum. He's holding the dragon's tongue there. That's Amun, his name. And the thing is, it's a horn extension of a swordfish. It's what the dragon's tongue is in that version. But there's also another version. It's in the Tyrolean State Museum, is where it's at. And this is some real shit. Type the shit in when you get off. Go on Google. And what in this other alternative version, he kills the giant Thyrsus. It's Thyrsus is the name. And Thyrsus's blood, they call it Thyrsenblut in the German, and it's Tyrolean shell oil. Is one of the terms for it. They even got a saying in German. What is it? Spritzblut, Severbisch und Menschen gut, which means blood spray be good for man and beast. It's that healing blood of the dragon's tongue. But it's a form of Tyrolean shell oil, which is used in clinics all across Europe for healing of the skin. Go to the next pic. Here it is, Ichthyophil. And that's from Tyrolean shell oil, which they call the dragon's tongue, up there by the river Sil, where Amun killed the giant. And part of this other myths.
That's wild. Holy crap.
Yeah. And they got a motel there. You can go stay at his Amun's hotel there. And they got pictures of him with the dragon's tongue in the lobby. And that's what the whole tourism industry set up there. And you go up to the little mountain there, and they have a crater lake with the weird shell oil. And I don't know how they got swordfish up there. But the swordfish is dipped in gold, and they put that in the museum as well. So in their version, Ichthyophil is the dragon's tongue, which is a form of this healing oil, which in some people say that oil comes from dinosaurs, ancient dragons, or it's that shellfish's horn dipped in gold. So yeah, take it away, have some fun.
All right, so that's your presentation, Dion, eh? Wow.
Okay.
Interesting. So setting it all up. So for mine, I'm going to focus in on the Greek tradition, and we're going to start off by looking at, this comes to first I got to give a shout out to two of my dear friends who helped me find all this stuff, and that is Fish and Gandhi. So thank you guys for helping in the research department. So starting off here, we have PGM Book 7, 579, also known as the Ouroboros phylactery. Okay, and this is a magic spell. And if you look in the middle, you see these barbarous words, the voces magicae, all written around the snake. And this is important to the spell. And then you have all of these various gods and Egyptian and mixtures of this stuff. And then you get these weird symbols in the middle, right? This is the charakteres, or what many of us are looking at and thinking, what does this specific dragon tongue mean? What is it referencing? What is this about? Okay. And this was what started me on this journey of trying to understand the dragon tongue, was this specific spell and this untranslatable passage here of symbols. Here's a up close version of it. When you look in the actual version on the PGM, they have that in the margin here. You'll see it here, right beside follows. So I'll just read you the spell from the PGM. It says, a phylactery, a bodyguard against daimons, against phantasms, against every sickness and suffering, to be written on a leaf of gold or silver or tin, on hieratic papyrus. So look, we got gold or tin or papyrus. Makes me think of the golden fleece. We got skin, we have tin and gold, all very magical stuff that was really important. And people, the Phrygians, went exploring around the world to find this stuff, various peoples, like to the Tin Islands and such. All right. When worn, it works mightily, for it is the name of power of that great God and his seal. And it is as follows: Methys, Kephiris, Io, right? And we know Io is related to Yahweh. Like what you'll see, which is interesting in the Greek Magical Papyri, is that you get a combination of a bunch of different magical traditions. You have the Hebrew tradition, you have the Greek tradition, you have the Egyptian tradition, you have the Phrygian tradition, you have Mithraism, all being blended into one thing, all of it being combined in variations, right? So these are the names. The figure is like this. Let the snake be biting its tail. The names being written inside the circle made by the snake in the characters thus as follows. And there we have the name of the dragon in its symbolic form. The whole figure is drawn thus as given below. Protect my body and the entire soul of me. And you have to know the secret name. And when you have consecrated it, wear it. So that is the original spell that kind of started this whole off. But when I was doing some deep diving research into this, what I originally found out is that a lot of this stuff with the Ouroboros phylactery and what we're seeing here relates to two other spells within the PGM. Similar language, similar stuff going on. So the first one we see is called the Stella of Ju, or the Headless Rite. People who are into the occult, this is one of the most important and famous rites of all time. Crowley has done this one. It is now known as the Bornless Rite. By some people, it's super, super intense magical stuff that is both an evocation and an evocation, to be possessed by spirits, wild stuff. We'll get into it here. So this comes to us from PGM 596, and this is one of the passages from the Headless Rite in the Stella of Ju, which is said to be created by the hieroglyphicist. So again, it's all about these symbolic images that have these poly meanings, right? So here we go. I am the headless daimon with my sight and my feet. I am mighty one who possesses the immortal fire. I am the truth who hates the fact that unjust deeds are done in the world. I am the one who makes the lightning flash and the thunder roll. I am the one whose sweat is the heavy rain which falls upon the earth that it might be inseminated. I am the one whose mouth burns completely. I am the one who begets and destroys. I am the favor of the Ion. My name is a heart encircled by a serpent. Come forth and follow. Remember this line. My name is a heart encircled by a serpent. This is going to come up a bunch. But before we get to more of that, I want to show us what's known as the right to Typhon. And Typhon, as we know, is a great snake god, a primordial monster dragon serpent, right? So this is PGM 4-154. Neophotes to Pisamarictos, immortal king of Egypt. So that just means great magician, and it names someone, okay, who's an immortal king of Egypt. Greetings, since the great God had appointed you immortal king, and nature has made you the best wise man. I too, with a desire to show you the industry in me, have sent you this magical procedure which, with complete ease, produces a holy power. And after you have tested it, you too will be amazed at the miraculous nature of this magical operation. You will observe through bold divination on whatever day or night you want, and whatever place you want, beholding the God in the water and hearing a voice from the God which speaks in verses. In answers to whatever you want, you will attain both the ruler of the universe and whatever you command, and he will speak on other matters which you ask about. You will succeed by inquiring in this way. First, attach yourself to Helios, the god of the sun, right? The titan of the sun, in this manner. At whatever sunrise you want, provided it is the third day of the month, go up to the highest part of the house and spread a pure linen garment on the floor. Do this with a mystagogue. But as for you, crown yourself with dark ivy while the sun is in mid-heaven at the 5th hour. And while looking upward, lie down naked on the linen and order your eyes to be completely covered with a black band. Blind, covered with the black band, making me think of justice. And wrap yourself like a corpse in the linen. Close your eyes. And now you're a mummy, right? And keeping your direction toward the sun, begin these words in prayer. O mighty Typhon, ruler of the realm above, and master, God of gods, or Lord, Abracadabra, O dark disturber, thunder's bringer, whirlwind, night flasher, breather forth of hot and cold, shaker of rocks, wall trembler, boiler of the waves, disturber of the seas, great depths. I am he who searched with you the whole world and found great Osiris, whom I brought you chained. I am he who joined you in war with the gods, but others say against the gods. I am he who closed heaven's double gates and put to sleep the serpent which must not be seen. Who puts to sleep the serpent? Medea, right? Who stopped the seas, the streams, the river currents? Wherever you rule this realm, and as your soldier, I have been conquered by the gods. I have been thrown face down because of empty wrath. I raise up your friend, I beg you, I implore. Throw me not on the ground, O Lord of gods. O grant me power, I beg, and give it to me this favor, so that whoever I tell, one of the gods to come, he is seen coming, swiftly to me in answer to my chants. And then you're supposed to chant this 3 times. There will be a sign of divine encounter, but you, armed by having this magical soul, be not alarmed, for a sea falcon flies down and strikes you on the body with its wings, signifying this, that you should arise. But as for you, rise up and clothe yourself with white garments and burn on earthen censer uncut incense and grain, while saying this: I have been attached to your holy form, Typhon the snake. I'm now attached to you. I have given power by your holy name. I'm attached by the name. I have acquired your emanation, your power of the goods. Lord, God of gods, Master Daimon. And then more barbarous words. Having done this, return as Lord of a godlike nature, which is accomplished through this divine encounter. Right? So this is such a wild rite where you are invoking all this power, attaching yourself to that great serpentine typhonic force and embodying it and going into the world reborn as like a god. Right? Giving you that power to speak. So now we're going to get to some real interesting stuff. If you remember, I told you guys to remember that phrase, the heart encircled by a serpent. When we look for this phrase, it occurs to us in Clement's Protrepticus, or his what is it called? His denunciation or reform. Like it's a book where he's going after the Greek pagans and he's trying to defame the mysteries, trying to expose the mysteries, trying to convince pagans to become Christian. So he wants to reveal the Sabazian mysteries. He wants to profane them and prove that Christianity is greater. But by doing so, he showed us one of the great secrets. So he says here, the God through the bosom is the symbol of the Sabazian mysteries for the initiates. And in this context, the name of the dragon is Sabazios. The dragon is Sabazios. That's his name. Clement tells us full on, but also that word for bosom. This is a very special word. Those of us who've been following Ammon for a while will know it. Kolpos. Look here, bosom or lap. But go down to number 2, especially vagina. Especially vagina. And it also signifies the womb, the dark womb. The serpent entering the womb. Right? Wild stuff. Now we're going to go back to Revelation, which you had brought up, right? Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. Sabazios in the Phrygian mysteries is akin to Dionysus, right? He's even called the son of Dionysus at times because he is that reincarnation. Remember, Dionysus is the dying and rising god who is sacrificed. And this relates to that 2 horns like a lamb. Dionysus is the one with the lamb horns, but he speaks like a dragon. Sabazios, even in Revelation, is that dragon. Okay, now I want to hop over to, and if you want to interrupt, jump in at any time, Dion. I'm just going to crazy sources and showing you the wild stuff that I've been finding.
Having fun. I'm having fun.
All right, so now we got Dionysiaca by Nonus, which is the longest Greek epic and comes to us, I believe it's the 5th century, which is at the height of these Sabazian mysteries. So, no, sorry, it's much later. And what am I talking about? Never mind. Now, he leaned over the bed with a horned head on human limbs, lowering with the voice of a bull, the very likeness of bull-horned Dionysus. Again, he put on a shaggy lion's form, or he was a panther, as one who begets a bold son, driver of panthers, charioteer of lions. Again, as a young bridegroom, he bound his hair with coiling snakes and vine leaves intertwined, and twisted purple ivory about his locks, the plaited ornament of Bacchus. Writhing serpent crawled over the trembling bride and licked her rosy neck with gentle lips, then slipping into her bosom, girdled the circuit of her firm breasts. Girdled the circuit of her breasts, right? Hissing a wedding tune, and sprinkled her with sweet honey of the swarming bees instead of the viper's deadly poison. Zeus made long wooing and shouted, Eoi, right? Which is that cry of the Maenads, the Eva, right? Eve again, as if the winepress were near, signaling Dionysus as he begat his son, who would love the cry. Dionysus loves Ewa. He pressed love mad mouth to mouth and beaded up delicious nectar, an intoxicating bedfellow for Semele, that she might bring forth a son to hold the scepter of nectareal vintage as a presage of things to come. He lifted the care for getting grapes, resting his laden arm on the fire-bringing fennel, or again, he lifted a thyrsus twined about with purple ivy, wearing a deerskin on his back. The lovesick wearer shook the dappled fawn skin with his left arm. So wild stuff, and we're seeing how it all connects to the Maenadic rites, to Dionysus, to Sabazios, and to this power, right? Dionysus, remember, he's given that Zeus power. He's the child of Zeus and of a mortal woman, Semele. And this is showing his divine heritage. And part of that is that thyrsus, the staff, the club, right? Now I wanted to get into some Ovid. We're going to get a little wild here. We're going to start to look at some of these dragon priestesses, these people who are doing some of these crazy serpent magics. Right now we're looking at one of the Furies. This is Tisiphone, okay? So there she, Tisiphone, stands with arms extended and alive with twisting vipers. She shakes her hair. The moving serpents hiss. They cling on her shoulders and they glide around her temples, dart their fangs and vomit corruption. Plucking from the midst two snakes, she hurls them with her pestilential hand upon her victim. Athamas and Eno, whom although the vipers strike upon their breasts. So she takes the snake from her hair, she whips them at her victims, and they strike them on the breast, the Fury. No injury attacks their mortal parts. Only their minds are stricken with a wild rage, inciting to mad violence and crime, and with a monstrous composite of foam from the mouth, once gathered from the mouth of Cerberus, the venom of Echidna. Echidna is the great snake. Cerberus is the avatar of Hecate. Purposeless aberrances, crimes, tears, hatred, the lust of homicide, and the dark vaporings of foolish brains, a liquid poison mixed and mingled with fresh blood and hollow brass, and boiled and stirred up with the slip of hemlock. She took of it, and they trembled, threw that mad mixed potion on them and scorched their inmost vitals, and she weaved her torch repeatedly within a circle's rim and added flame to flame. Then, confident of having executed her command, the Fury hastened to the void expanse where Pluto reigns and swiftly put aside the serpents that were wreathed around her robes. So she gives them not only the bite of the serpent on the breast, but then she forces them to drink poison, right? Potion. And like you said, it goes back into the robes. It's always around the robes or around the arms, these snakes. And Pluto, recognized, is related to Dionysus, the ruler of the earth again. All right, here we have Virgil's Aeneid. Another quote I thought was just wild. Sliding between her clothing and her polished breath, it winds itself unfelt, unknown to the frenzied woman, breathing its viperous breath. The powerful snake becomes her twisted necklace of gold, becomes the loop of her long ribbon, knots itself in her hair, and roves slithering down her limbs. This is talking about how they get possessed by this magic, right? That Apollo Helios, that Dionysus Sabazios magic that's granting them oracular power. And this comes to us from Cicero on the nature of the gods. And this is going to show us that it's even greater still, right? It also has to do with this, as Dion, you were talking about earlier, astrotheology. This indeed is at his back, but the anguitenes, the snake holder, is near his head. The Greeks him Ophiuchus call, renowned the name. He strongly grasps the serpent round with both his hands. Himself the serpent folds beneath his breast, and round his middle holds. Yet gravely he bright, shining in the skies, moves on Nepa's breasts and eyes, treads on Nepa's breasts and eyes. And right, Ophiuchus is one of the most important constellations. It comes to us from the ancient text of Ptolemy. And here he is with another constellation, Serpens, right? And he's wrestling Serpens. But this one isn't actually accurate to that description. Serpens is wrapping around his breast, right? Okay, we're now going to get into some more wildness. This is coming to us from Ovid's Fausti. I had mentioned this earlier, but we were talking about those losing of the speech, losing of the tongue, and the one who stands up for justice and speaks to authority, but then suffers for it, right? So we're now going to look at this story of the goddess Muta. So, and once you will ask me, who is the goddess Muta the mute? Hear what I learned from the old men gone in years, conquered by exceeding love of Juturna. Jupiter submitted to many things which so great a god ought not to bear. For now she would hide in the woods among the hazel thickets. Now she would leap down into her sister waters. The god called together all the nymphs who dwell in Latium. And thus in the midst of the troop he spake aloud. Your sister is her own enemy, and shuns that union with the supreme God, which is all for her good. Pray look to her interest and to mine, for what is a great pleasure to me will be a great boon to your sister. When she flees, stop her on the edge of the bank, lest she plunges into the water of the river. He spake. Assent was given by all the nymphs of the Tiber, by those who haunt Lila divine, thy wedding bowers. It chanced there was a nymph, a naiad nymph, Lara by name, but her old name was the first syllable repeated twice. La, 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 the babble, right? That barbarous word, okay? And that was given her to mark her failing. Many a time Almo had said to her, my daughter, hold thy tongue, but hold it she did not. No sooner did she reach the pool of her sister Joturna than fly the banks, said she, and reported the words of Jupiter. She even visited Juno after expressing her pity for married dames. Your husband, quoth she, is in love with the naiad Juturna. Jupiter fumed and wrenched from her the tongue she had used so indiscreetly. He also called for Mercury. Take her to the dead land, said he. That's the place for mutes. A nymph she is, but a nymph of the eternal marsh she'll be. The orders of Jupiter were obeyed. On their way they came to a grove. Then it was, they say, that she won the heart of her divine conductor. He would have used force. For want of words, she pleased with a look. And in all vain she strove to speak with her dung lips. She went with child and bore twins, who guard the crossroads and ever keep watch in our city. They are the Lares, right? Again, we get to that mysterious Acca Laurentia, the mother of Lares, and Faustulus, her partner, right? And those twins, the Lares, are also Romulus and Remus.
I find it interesting that she can't speak, but she won him with a look.
Right? Kind of wild. That
Nonverbal communication
right?
is a big part of how we communicate. It's more than speech.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's such a good point. You know, and that's how the muse is communicating through that gaze. It's always about that gaze with this Helios lineage, that magic. Remember, Medea, all of these people are coming from that lineage of that Heliotic family from Hecate on down. It's wild stuff. So we're going to go again to the Aeneid. So Alecto, steeped in Gorgon's poison, first searches out Latium in the high halls of the Laurentian king, Acca Laurentia, Laurentine king, and sits at the silent threshold of Queen Amata, who concerns and angers have troubled with a woman's passion. Concerning the Trojans' arrival and Thomas's marriage, the goddess flings a snake at her from dark locks and plunges it into the breast, to her innermost heart, so that maddened by the creature she might trouble the whole palace. Sliding between her clothing and her polished breast, it winds itself. The powerful snake becomes her twisted necklace. We read that part. I wanted to read another part here. Sorry. Where did I see that? Okay. Sorry. She speaks softly and in a mother's usual manner, weeping greatly over the marriage of her daughter to the Trojan. O you, her father, no pity for your daughter or yourself? Have you no pity for her mother when the faithless seducer will leave the first north wind, seeking deep with the girl as prize? Wasn't it so when Paris, that Phrygian shepherd, entered Sparta and snatched Lada's Helen off to the Trojan cities? What of your sacred pledge? What of your former care for your own people and your right hand given to your kinsman Turnus? Again, it's though, I wanted to point this out, it's the speaking up for violence against women, right? Trying to defend women. You're selling your daughter off in marriage to a tyrant, and I have to call that out. And it is settled in your father Faunus' command weighs on you. Then I myself think that every land free of our rule that is distant is foreign, and so the gods declare. And that is the first origin of his house are traced. Inachus and Acrisius, the ancestors of Turnus and Mycenae, his heartland. When thou, trying in vain with words, she sees Latinus stand firm against her. And when the snake's maddening venom has seeped deep into her flesh and permeated throughout, then truly the unhappy queen, goaded on by monstrous horrors, rages madly, unrestrained through the city, as a spinning top. Now, Dion, you want to talk about the spinning top for a second and the importance of that?
Wow. Well, I would say watch our other episodes, and we live on a spinning top.
Right? We live on a spinning top. And it's that spinning top that distracts Zagreus that causes him to fall into creation and be ripped apart by the Titans, who then steal his power on the throne, right? Hecate is that spinning top. We have all of the rites of the spinning from you were showing us those incredible frescoes from Pompeii that had to do with the rites where these girls would be whipped and made to spin, and they'd be wearing these purple things, right? It's crazy stuff.
Well, they were whipped with thyrsus or fennel stalks dipped in honey.
Yeah.
And also in those same frescoes, it showed women and animals breastfeeding each other.
Right. And it has to do with this Aphroditic magic. Remember, there's that jinx, right? The wryneck bird in the nymph jinx. And it's her power that is able to bind people into maddening love. And it's through that bird that's strapped to the spinning wheel. And Jason uses that magic on Medea, right? This kind of magic is like a supreme kind of evil in many ways. But yeah, the spinning top, sometimes that boy intent on play, thrash in a circle round in an empty courtyard, turns under the whirling lash, driven with the whip it moves in curving tracks, and the childish crowd marvel over it in innocence, gazing at the twirling boxwood and the blows granted life. And the blows granted life, right? Pushing us through generation through that whip. So she is driven through the heart of the cities and proud peoples on a course that is no less swift. Moreover, she runs to the woods pretending Bacchic possession, setting out on a greater sin and creating wider frenzy, and hides her daughter among the leafy mountains to rob the Trojans of their wedding day, the nuptials. Shrieking, Io! Again, we see
You!
Io. To Bacchus, crying, "You alone are worthy of this virgin. It is for you in truth she lifts the soft thyrsus. She circles in the dance. For you she grows her sacred hair. Rumor travels, and the same frenzy drives all the women. Inflamed with madness in their hearts to seek strange shelter, they leave their homes and bare their head and neck to the winds, while others are already filling the air with vibrant howling, carrying vine-wrapped spears and clothed in fawnskin. The wild queen herself brandishes a blazing pine branch in the midst, turning her bloodshot gaze on them, sings the wedding song for Turnus and her daughter, and suddenly fierce cries out, "O women of Latium, wherever you are, hear me. If you still have regard for unhappy Amata in your pious hearts, if you're stunned with concern for a mother's rights, loose the ties from your hair, join the rites with me." So Alecto drives the queen with Bacchic goad, far and wide through the woods, among the wild creatures' lairs. If you are tired of the injustice perpetrated against women, let loose your hair, come out into the wilderness, and cry for Bacchus, and we will get justice. Wild, eh?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to skip this one, I think. Well,
And you know, when you're talking about the spinning top, that's the Ouroboros.
Absolutely.
If the dragon's tongue is biting the tail, and at the beginning of the show, we showed you the holoa, which is the threshing floor, where the horses go in a circle. You know, there's a mythology there.
Right.
But if I can say one thing, dragons are kind of friendly in some myths. It's in certain myths that they're evil, but in other myths, dragons are good luck.
Absolutely.
If I can point that out. Dragons have a good luck energy. There are times that you can piss them off, but I think you could seduce them, let's say.
Right. But there's so much more to unpack here. There's a couple of other things that I want to talk about. But we're going to get into it in the next episode. We got to go deep into this Ouroboros imagery. And that brings us deep into Egypt and into Wadjet, and to all of these great snakes, you know, because there's this primordial connection here, and that zero, that infinity, that loop, and that driving of the whip to force us through creation. And it's that snake that brings that madness that doesn't allow us to settle, that forces us to have the strength to transform and to resist oppression. This is what I think that dragon tongue is about. It's that fire to spit invective, to use that satire to call out authority and to flip the poles, right?
Yeah. Oh, love it. So then we're gonna get into some Sabazios,
Yeah.
the Bacchic, the Orphic Vox, and Orpheus. There's a lot to unpack. Love it.
I also want to get into, we didn't talk yet about the Scythian language. And one of the Scythians had multiple languages, and one of the languages that we know from Herodotus that they used was the language of dioramas. For example, when they were fighting against the Persians and Darius, what they did is they sent him a box, and inside the box there were 5 arrows, a dead rat, a dead frog, and a dead bird. And they were told they had to interpret that message. And the message, as interpreted by them, was that you can't hide from our arrows. You're going to wind up dead, whether you're in the land, the air, or the sea. We're coming for you, unrelenting. But spoke through this placing of symbols, and we even see it in their burial stuff. I showed you that link I found today.
What's ironic is that before they settle on that conclusion, the first court interpreter or diviner looks at the symbols and says, "Oh yeah, we're going to win."
Yeah, right.
The other two goes, "No, that's not what it means. They're telling you he could get you on land, air, and water, and he's sending you 5 arrows. Like, he's saying he's going to get your ass. Like, look at." And so this is the language. And so that sets up the stage for art. This is about art, what it comes down to. And art is a language as well, a form of communication.
Right.
You know?
And we see this, like, it still survives today in many different traditions. Like, this is such a huge part of the Indian traditions, for example. The Murtis tell stories. All of these different images are beyond important, and they have layers of symbolic and metaphorical meaning that if you are invested in that aesthetic tradition, that you can understand, and it will tell you a story. And remember, right, we're dealing with rights and ideas that go back all the way to pre-writing, right? A lot of this stuff kind of lost its focus because we all adopted writing. But before writing, people were communicating through images, through the body, through many different ways, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why the oldest things that we can find in the past are like what, petroglyphs,
Yeah.
rock paintings, our burials. That's about as good as we can go in 2024. Is this sophisticated AI technology culture? Is the oldest we go back to mankind is some little drawings on the wall. That's the oldest we can interpret.
And it's so wild is that right from the very beginning, we were drawing and making signs, right? And in my mind, when I look at a lot of those cave walls, it looks like magic to me. You drawing yourself hunting and being successful and catching the prey that you want. It's like imagining your success. It's projecting that success into reality. That's a magical act.
Yeah. So like, subscribe, share, comment. Shout out to any of the people that were watched today. I saw Nancy earlier in the comments.
Much love,
To all the
Nancy.
crew on Discord, Gandhi, Ion, Rob Steele. Shout out to you, Rob.
Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in for this one. Yeah, big shout out to the community, because a lot of these references and whatnot, and a lot of this information was not found by us. This was stuff that has been coming together for almost 2 years now. So again, shout out to the Greater Lady Babylon community. Much love to you all. And yeah, tune in for our next week, where we'll be diving even deeper and going into more snake dragon symbols and more Vox Magicae. Peace and love, everyone. Until next time. Any last words, Dion?
Live your best life.
All right, everyone. Take care.